Hey everybody, how's it going? I'm Thomas Kai, representing the Student International Business Council here at Benedictine College. Bringing back to you my project, Business Professionalism, where we discuss all of your business intro needs from resumes, cover letters, and interviews. Joining me today is Dr. King, who is head of the business department. He's a great professor, one of my advisors, leading me through this. Dr. King, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, Thomas. Glad to be here. I love the idea of what you're doing. I compliment you for that.
Oh, thank you. So I guess to start off our conversation, you had mentioned to me a topic of yours, which you called the hinge point, or finding the hinge point in interviews. Now, I know a lot of students here will probably be going into interviews. They will be probably very nervous about it. They're not sure what they're going to talk about. And we're going to get into some of the more fine details of interviewing, but I would love for you to share with me and everyone else here about this topic of yours that you call finding the hinge point. So
good. Yeah. And this, what I've learned over the years is that the interview is usually one of two types. Either the purpose of the interviewer is to learn about the personality of the candidate. That's one type. They're usually interested in saying, you know, what's this person's strengths and weaknesses? Will they fit in here, and things like that. The second type of interview, which we saw go away for many years, but appears to be coming back now, is the more where they're trying to determine the candidate's aptitude in some area. All right, and that's what I was referring to when we were discussing earlier about, you know, what I call the hinge point. And the reason is because if you're in an interview, and usually you're going to know going into the interview what type it is. For example, if the interviewer is someone from the HR department, then you're probably going to be in the first type of interview. The HR person's job is to learn about you as a person, learn a little bit about your background, strengths and weaknesses. Would they be a good fit in our corporate culture and things like that. But if you're going to be interviewed either by one, and especially if it's a team of people, then, and if the interviewer or interviewers are also the people actually doing the hiring, or the people from the division or the department that you're applying for the job in, then it's possible it's going to be an aptitude type interview where they will, in addition to the usual standard questions, you might start getting questions that are more penetrating on the topic. So for example, let's say you're a finance major and you're interviewing for a finance job. One of the things that we're seeing more frequently now is they might hand you a case. And it'd be a short page. It'd be just like a case you might have in the classroom, except for this will be short, maybe, you know, 100 or 200 words, paragraph, where they're going to now ask you to first read the case and then begin the process of solving it. And it depends on, of course, how long it is and how elaborate. But when I've coached students I knew a couple students just here recently that they knew they were going to an interview where this was going to be the situation. They were going to be presented with something. And what I encourage them to do is, as they read it, look for what the case is, what it turns on. Usually most cases, particularly when you're testing someone like that, it's a little bit like what law students go through their first year of law school. In the first year of law school, they try to teach you how to read a case and how to try to get to the heart of the matter. So this would be the same way in an interview. If you're a little bit nervous, and you're already probably going to be a little bit nervous because they're testing you now on, you know, your aptitude or your knowledge of something. And that's a little bit more difficult than telling, you know, who your hero is or what your most difficult thing you've ever done in your life is. So what I say is relax. Usually the fact pattern of the case is going to be pretty simple. They're not going to throw in an interview something on you that's really elaborate or complex. And what they're probably looking for is your ability to think clearly, quickly, and get to the heart of something, and then begin the process of evaluating that or assessing the situation, and then maybe already start thinking of solutions or conclusions or whatever it is they're looking for. So the important thing to remember is there's probably not a right or a wrong answer in something like this. What they're looking for is, how are you going to handle this? How's your mind going to approach this problem? And that's why I say most of these, there's going to be a key point. There's going to be a hinge point on which the case really turns. And if you can recognize that, then already you will have demonstrated that you can go right to, you know, when you see a fact pattern, you'll look for the pattern that is there, and you're looking for the key element. And if you identify that, then you go from there. So what I see is, based on this fact pattern I'm reading, it looks like what we really have here, the problem or the obstacle is this. And I would begin addressing this problem by first, you know, making sure that that's indeed what the problem is, and then starting to formulate in my mind what a solution would be. So usually, again, this is sort of generic, but because unless they give you the case in advance, in which, and I've seen that happen, actually, this is going back a couple years, where an interviewer, and I think the name of it was Dick's Sporting Good, I even remember the company, and they gave the student a fact pattern ahead of the time. And they said that we're going to test, you know, we want you to talk about this, what you see in this and what you can come up with. So if you get it in advance like that, then of course you have time to think it through and maybe even, you know, seek some advice. But if it's spontaneous or extemporaneous, as we might say, then you're going to be reading something and they're going to be looking at you and assessing your reaction to seeing something for the first time, and how do you approach it. So obviously you don't want to be lost. You want to take your time, read it, but if you're surprised at that, look for the key element, look for the hinge point, as I said when you and I talked. I think that's a term from law school as well. What's the hinge point on this? What's the point around which everything is turning? And if you can recognize that, that alone will show well in an interview, because they're not going to expect you to be an expert already in solving the problem that they've presented you with. What they're testing you on is your ability to recognize the problem and realize that a solution is possible. We just have to begin working from the problem and then going forward from that.
Yeah, I think those are some great points. I can think of times where I was in interviews and I did not look for the hinge point, which looking back, it probably would have served me to have known them. And so you discussed how they use those in like an aptitude sort of test, where they want to see like how you evaluate what it is that you're looking at. How would you apply the hinge point if it's not an aptitude test? What if they are not necessarily looking for a correct answer, but more of a sort of response?
Yeah, so this would be maybe an interview where what they're probing maybe is your personality, your character, and whatnot. And once again, just like with the case, if it's sort of on the aptitude side and they give you a case with a fact pattern, you're going to be reading it, and you're going to be, and the advice would be, as you're reading it, look for the key point. If it's actually something more generic, less specific, and really more penetrating your personality and your character, well, the principle is still the same. You have to think quickly on your feet, obviously, anytime in an interview, and that's part of what they're going to be looking at. But slow your mind down a little bit. and say, what are they actually trying to, what do I think they're trying to get at? You know, are they, okay, the way they're positioning this question, you know, they might be trying to determine how I react under stress, or how do I handle a situation that I've never encountered before. And for the first time I'm facing a situation, because the way they frame the question may not be very clear what they're getting at. But if you kind of think it through like that, then you might say, yeah, okay, they're looking for how I would react to something after I see it for the first time, and it creates a problem. You know, there's a problem that has to be solved. So those are good. And, you know, it's really good in those cases, Thomas, as well. And, you know, a lot of times we can talk about how do you prepare for an interview? Well, you know, I'm sure there are lots of tools out there that students can, you know, research and think about. But it's good to think about questions like that and how you will answer it. I mean, you want to kind of rehearse an answer, not so that you come across still like like an actor, like you're reading from a script, right? You're reading, you're suddenly, you go into memory mode and you're just reading what you rehearsed a few times. But you definitely want to think about it. I mean, how will I answer if they ask me who's the most important person in my life, or what's the biggest dilemma I've ever faced, and how did I handle it? You know, or what's the most rewarding I've ever felt after doing something? You know, how do I tell, they might say, you know, tell us a little bit about your projects that you've worked on in college where you've been on a team, and how did you handle that, and things like that. Well, what they're doing is the hinge point there is they're trying to see how well you work with others, you know. And so anytime you can think about how you would answer those things and have something already in your mind, not only are you going to be more confident when that question comes up in the interview, and you're going to come across now as more confident, but you'll also stay calm. You know, it'll keep you settled, which also is a good thing to do in an interview, to show composure at all times. So.
All right. Well, I think this is some great advice for everyone out there. Thank you for sharing this first topic with everybody, finding the hinge point in an interview. I think that a lot of our students will greatly benefit from this, and hopefully people outside of Benedictine as well will maybe be able to find their way to this video and get a chance to learn from your wisdom.